Robert Simmons stepped into the dealership on a brisk afternoon, his old sedan parked just outside. He was a man of simple means, or so it appeared. Clad in a faded coat that had seen better days and a pair of scuffed shoes, Robert's modest appearance made him blend into the background of the dealership's sleek and polished interiors. Despite his unassuming demeanor, there was a quiet determination in his eyes as he admired the shiny new cars on display. He wasn't there to impress anyone, he simply wanted a reliable vehicle to suit his needs. However, Robert's presence went largely unnoticed. The sales staff, dressed in sharp suits and polished shoes, moved swiftly around the showroom, their attention fixed on younger, more fashionable customers who looked like they belonged in luxury cars. Robert wandered from one display to another, pausing at a sleek black sedan that had caught his eye, yet no one came over to offer assistance. It was as if his modest appearance rendered him invisible. After standing by the car for nearly 20 minutes, Robert decided to approach the front desk. Behind it stood 3 salesmen, engaged in animated conversation. One of them, Garrett Blake, a young man with slick-back hair and an air of smug confidence, barely glanced at Robert as he approached. "Excuse me," Robert said politely, his voice steady despite the frustration building inside. "I'm interested in purchasing one of your vehicles. Could someone assist me?" Garrett looked up briefly, then smirked. "We're a bit busy right now," he said dismissively. "Why don't you come back later?" The condescension in his tone was impossible to miss. As Robert turned to leave, he overheard a faint chuckle and a whispered comment from one of the other salesmen. "Window shopper. Wasting our time." The words hit Robert like a slap in the face, but he maintained his composure, walking calmly out of the dealership and back to his old car. As he drove away, a storm brewed inside him, not of anger, but of determination. Little did the staff know, Robert Simmons was no ordinary man. Though he lived simply, he had built a fortune through decades of smart investments and wise decisions. That evening, as he sat in his humble home, an idea began to take shape. A plan that would not only teach the dealership staff a lesson in humility, but also transform their business from the inside out. That evening, Robert Simmons sat quietly in his modest living room, his old sedan parked outside. To anyone else, he looked like a retired man enjoying a simple life, but there was much more to Robert than met the eye. Decades of hard work and shrewd investments had built him a substantial fortune, though he never flaunted his wealth. He valued character over appearances and preferred to live humbly, believing that true wealth lay in how you treated others. The events of the day replayed in Robert's mind, the indifference, the dismissive tone, and the mocking laughter he'd endured at the dealership. Rather than feeling defeated, he felt a spark of determination. He wasn't just going to let it go. He was going to take action. With a steady resolve, Robert picked up his phone and began making calls to his network of influential contacts in the business world. Over the years, his reputation for integrity and strategic thinking had earned him powerful allies. One by one, he laid out his plan and secured the support he needed. By the end of the evening, Robert had orchestrated a bold move. He had acquired the car dealership. It wasn't just about proving a point. It was about creating a space where customers would be valued, regardless of how they looked. Robert saw an opportunity to turn the dealership into something greater than it had been, a place built on respect, fairness, and exceptional service. The next morning, Robert returned to the dealership. This time, he wasn't there as a customer. Clad in the same worn coat and scuffed shoes, he walked through the doors with quiet confidence. What the staff didn't know was that their world was about to change, and Robert Simmons was about to reveal his true identity as their new boss. The next morning, Robert Simmons walked into the dealership once again, wearing the same worn coat and scuffed shoes from the day before. The staff barely noticed his arrival after all. To them, he was just another forgettable customer. But this time, Robert wasn't there to browse. He was there to take charge. As he entered, Thomas Green, the dealership's general manager, noticed him and approached with a polite but insincere smile. Thomas didn't recognize Robert from the day before and assumed he was just another unimportant visitor. "Good morning, sir. How can we assist you today?" Thomas asked, in a practiced, professional tone. Robert reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a neatly folded set of documents. Without a word, he handed them to Thomas and watched as the man unfolded the papers and began to read. At first, Thomas's face was expressionless, but as his eyes scanned the words, his confident smile faded, replaced by a look of disbelief. His hands began to tremble slightly as he read the final line. What is this?" Thomas stammered, his voice unsteady. Robert met his gaze, his calm demeanor unwavering. "These are the documents proving my acquisition of this dealership," he said evenly. "As of this morning, I am the new owner." The room fell silent. The other staff members, overhearing the interaction, began whispering among themselves, their curiosity piqued. The tension in the air was palpable as Robert turned his attention to the entire team. His voice, though quiet, carried an authority that demanded respect. "Yesterday, I walked into this dealership as a customer," Robert began. "I was ignored, dismissed, and judged solely based on my appearance. The treatment I received was unacceptable, not just for me, but for anyone who walks through these doors. That ends today." He turned back to Thomas, who was still frozen in shock. "Thomas, as the general manager, it was your responsibility to ensure that every customer was treated with respect. Instead, you allowed a toxic culture to flourish here. Effective immediately, you're fired." Thomas's jaw dropped. "Fired? You can't be serious," he exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief. "I'm very serious," Robert replied calmly. "This dealership needs a complete transformation, and that starts with leadership." The staff watched in stunned silence as Thomas left the room, his face pale with humiliation. Robert then addressed the remaining employees, his tone firm but fair. "This dealership will no longer tolerate arrogance, indifference, or discrimination of any kind," he declared. "Every customer, regardless of how they look or what you think they can afford, will be treated with dignity and respect. If you can't uphold those values, there's no place for you here." One by one, Robert began calling out the employees who had participated in the dismissive behavior the day before. Garrett Blake, the slick-haired salesman who had ignored and mocked Robert, was among the first to be dismissed. "Pack your things," Robert said firmly. Garrett, unable to protest, slinked away in shame. By the end of the morning, Robert had made it clear that a new era had begun. The dealership was no longer a place where arrogance thrived. It was now a business built on fairness, respect, and integrity, a reflection of Robert's unwavering values. With the initial shock of Robert Simmons's takeover still rippling through the dealership, he wasted no time setting things in motion. His first priority was to address the toxic culture that had festered under the previous leadership. Standing in the center of the showroom, Robert methodically called out the employees whose dismissive behavior he had witnessed firsthand. "Garrett Blake," Robert said, his voice steady as his gaze landed on the slick-haired salesman. Garrett froze, the smirk he had worn so confidently the day before now replaced with dread. "Your actions yesterday were a prime example of what this dealership will no longer tolerate. Pack your things. You're done here." Garrett opened his mouth to protest, but thought better of it. With his head down, he shuffled away to gather his belongings, his dismissal a clear warning to the rest of the staff. Next, Robert turned to the remaining employees, his tone both firm and resolute. "This dealership will no longer operate on arrogance and indifference. From this day forward, every customer will be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or financial status. If you can't commit to these values, this is not the place for you." Not all interactions that day were punitive. Amidst the chaos, Robert took the time to reward those who had stood out for their kindness. One such employee was Laura Bennett, a young woman who had discreetly greeted Robert the previous day and offered a warm smile, even though she hadn't been assigned to sales. "Laura Bennett," Robert called out, motioning for her to step forward. Nervously, Laura approached, unsure of what to expect. "You were one of the few people here who treated me with even a shred of decency. Starting today, you're the new floor manager." Laura's eyes widened in disbelief. "Me? But I've only been here 6 months," she stammered. Robert smiled warmly. "I'm not interested in seniority," he replied. I'm interested in people who treat others the right way. Congratulations." The remaining staff exchanged glances, visibly shaken. They now understood that Robert wasn't just there for revenge. He was building something greater. His leadership wasn't about tearing people down, but about cultivating an environment where respect and fairness reigned supreme. By the end of the day, nearly half the staff had been dismissed, replaced in the following weeks with individuals who shared Robert's vision. Under Laura's leadership and Robert's guidance, the dealership began to transform. The arrogant indifference that had once defined the business was replaced with a welcoming, professional atmosphere. Robert's message was clear. Humility and kindness weren't just ideals, they were the foundation of success. The changes he implemented not only rebuilt the dealership's reputation, but also left a lasting impact on everyone who worked there. In the weeks that followed, the transformation of the dealership was nothing short of remarkable. Word quickly spread about the new management and the extraordinary changes taking place. Customers who had once been deterred by the arrogance and indifference of the staff were now greeted with warmth and professionalism. The atmosphere in the showroom shifted from cold and dismissive to welcoming and vibrant. Sales began to soar, and the dealership's reputation skyrocketed. People from all over the city came not just to buy cars, but to experience the exceptional service that had become its hallmark. Under Laura Bennett's leadership as the new floor manager, the staff embodied the principles Robert Simmons had laid out: respect, fairness, and humility. Robert himself remained as modest as ever. Despite being the driving force behind the dealership's success, he didn't bask in the attention or take credit for the turnaround. For him, it wasn't about proving a point or seeking revenge. It was about creating something meaningful. One afternoon, as Robert strolled through the bustling showroom, he noticed Laura approaching him. Her confidence had grown immense. "Mr. Simmons," she began hesitantly, "I just wanted to thank you for believing in me and giving me this opportunity." Robert smiled warmly. "You earned it, Laura. All I did was recognize what was already there. Just remember, keep treating people with respect. That's what truly matters." Laura nodded, her gratitude evident. Under her leadership and Robert's guidance, the dealership flourished, becoming a symbol of how humility and kindness can triumph over arrogance and indifference. As Robert left the showroom that day, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not from the power he had gained, but from the positive change he had brought about. His legacy wasn't about wealth or possessions, but the reminder that treating others with respect can leave an indelible mark on the world. This story is a powerful reminder that humility and kindness can create lasting change. How we treat others, regardless of appearances, reflects our true character. If Robert Simmons's journey inspired you, take a moment to reflect on the lessons we can all carry into our lives. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Real Life Stories for more incredible tales of transformation and inspiration. Thank you for watching.